Joining me now to discuss the latest on the war in Ukraine and the fallout from the latest political scandal to rock the Democratic Party is House Foreign Affairs Committee member and the endorsed Republican candidate for governor of New York, Congressman Lee Zeldin. Congressman, happy Passover to you and your family. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be with you.
So I want to first get your reaction to CIA Director William Burns' comments at Georgia Tech this week, in which he indicated the administration knew in the fall, perhaps the early fall, that Putin was likely to invade. So the administration knew, and then it looks like had absolutely no plan to actually try to stop this invasion.
Yeah, and if you're going to take inventory of different instruments of national power, aside from military, you're going to look at possible sanctions that you could put on the table as a threat. That economic pressure, the multilateral, the bilateral diplomacy, you have to create enough of a deterrent effect, or the sanctions regime is just not going to have the desired effect. Clearly, that was the case in this situation, because Putin decides to invade Ukraine. If you had the earlier warning, that allows you to be able to work with the international community, share what you know, to be leaders. And what we saw too, not just in taking inventory of options, and words matter. We saw from the president, we saw from the vice president and others that they were making errors in the way that they were conveying the United States position, their position, once this was starting, but also in the weeks to go. When we saw President Biden talking about a green light of a minor incursion, the White House might scramble to try to clean that up after the fact, but the damage was done in Russia. I would lastly just say that it's important to communicate all options are on the table. There's nothing wrong with them saying all options are on the table. Clearly, we do not want war. That is always the last possible option anywhere at any time. But I just feel like the communication from the administration was also a contributing factor.
No, they pulled our trainers out of the Ukraine, our military trainers. They pulled the ships out of the Baltic Sea. It didn't seem like they had any plan. And I talked to people in Ukraine. They say, yeah, we believe that this could have been prevented. But now there is increasing concern, Congressman, over the use of a tactical nuclear or chemical weapons. Do you believe that the administration is prepared to respond to such an escalation?
You know, it's an interesting question, because in one way, I would say that no one in the world is really ever ready for that, because you understand what that means. This has been something that really, over the course of decades now, there's been an understanding when one side launches and then the other side pushes their red button, the consequences can be catastrophic for the whole world. In a way, you could say the United States has been prepared for decades, but in a way, you can also argue that no one in the world will ever be prepared because of what this means. That's why our role is hugely important to de-escalate. We have to be taking inventory of all options to de-escalate, not escalate, because this can get a lot worse very quickly.
Now, you're a staunch supporter of Israel, Congressman. I mean, if you're an Israeli leader right now, are you getting more concerned that this crisis is going to spread, that Iran somehow takes a cue from the Russians and the Chinese and starts getting more aggressive in the Middle East?
And this is one of the reasons why I have so much respect for the Israelis, is because every day they're facing threats all around them. This does not help what's happening in Ukraine. It doesn't help that the Biden administration is willing to enter into an Iran nuclear deal that's even worse than Obama's deal from 2015. Meanwhile, you have Hamas terrorists engaging in attacks. You have Hezbollah with tens of thousands of rockets on the northern border, threats from Gaza. So yeah, the Israelis, they really have more of an existential threat from all sides than just about anyone else in the world.
Congressman, I want to switch to domestic politics. Another political scandal rocking Democrats in the state of New York. Less than a year after Governor Andrew Cuomo resigned in disgrace, Governor Kathy Hochul's handpicked Lieutenant Governor Michael Benjamin has resigned after being arrested on campaign finance corruption charges. Your reaction to that this week?
Kathy Hochul owns all of this. I mean, one, she shouldn't have picked Brian Benjamin in the first place. He wasn't just an advocate of the defund the police agenda. He was the champion of the defund the police agenda in the New York State Senate. That should have disqualified him. Also, a lot of what's come out was reported before the selection of Brian Benjamin. Yes, there have been new facts since, absolutely. But as early as January 2021, some of these facts were starting to emerge in media reporting. Now, you go back to a week or so ago, Kathy Hochul was asked about Brian Benjamin, and she chose to triple down, to cover for him, to talk about how much confidence she had in him. It was only because of an arrest and an indictment that he ended up resigning, but Kathy Hochul chose to own all of this. It shows her really bad judgment from this very first important decision when she became governor to covering for him as recently as last week.
She continues to, it appears to be afraid of the far left, and that's one of the reasons why he got named to begin with. Now, Congressman, Governor Hochul was there. You talk about defund the police. She was there in Brooklyn this week on the same day that he was arrested following that mass shooting. She has offered little in the way of solutions to the crime crisis gripping New York. If you are governor in January, how do you start saving lives on our streets, Congressman?
Well, first off, not only is she asking for little, she's also willing to settle for practically nothing, which is even worse than her starting point in negotiation. I believe that district attorneys like Alvin Bragg should be fired for their refusal to enforce the law. The governor has the constitutional authority to fire a DA who refuses to enforce the law. I back the blue. I was born, raised in a law enforcement household. I picked as my running mate a commanding lieutenant governor. We should repeal cashless bail in this state and give judges discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal record and seriousness of the offense on all offenses. You know, honestly, we could just keep going down what is a very long list of common sense, obvious options that turn streets and subways back over to law-abiding citizens.
Congressman, this week a new report showed that New York and California again led the nation in outmigration of residents. They're moving to Sunbelt states and, you know, anywhere else but there. The state is losing earners and gaining more folks who require more government assistance. How do you get people to believe in New York again? How do you get people to come back?
Well, one, we have to make the streets and subways safe again. People care about crime and public safety for sure. Also, economically, people are just struggling to afford to survive in New York. Even people who can afford to survive in New York, the politicians in Albany, the geniuses who keep raising income tax rates, they're getting people who are high earners to leave for places like Florida where that's not being pursued. Also, the quality of our kids' education, the respect and defense of freedom. We saw a lot of COVID mandates that made absolutely no sense. So for New Yorkers who are thinking about fleeing, hitting their breaking point, we need to tell them that we're going to reverse the attacks on their wallets, their safety, their freedom, their kids' education. We need to back it up with action. And this isn't about what can you accomplish in your first term. It's what can you accomplish in your first day, in the first 3 months. We don't have time to wait years to turn this state around. And if we keep the people who are there now, an outsized power of self-described socialists, it actually will get worse.
Yeah. One more question for you, and this is sort of a hybrid federal state question. It has been revealed over the last number of months that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife have put hundreds of millions of dollars into funding the administration of elections, and also almost an equal amount of money into these soft on crime criminal justice reform issues. Your thoughts on private corporations, so-called nonprofits who are backed principally by, one tech oligarch, for instance, in this case, and their ability to have such a tremendous influence on public policy and the administration of elections. Is that something that we need to deal with as a country, either in Washington or in state capitals?
Well, absolutely. And one of the concerns is that you're asking about it and so many others aren't. So in order to deal with it, I mean, we have to conquer the reality that a whole lot of people aren't even talking about it. I mean, it's just total blackout on some other networks. But yeah, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. State legislatures are responsible for setting the law of how the administration of elections should be carried out in these states. In 2020, in the name of the pandemic, you saw non-state legislative actors changing the ways that it was going to be administered. That's something to talk about and to deal with for the future, because that can certainly happen again. Election integrity, regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second, is an important conversation. We don't want private actors with a highly partisan agenda trying to push, especially this far left radical change of our country, to be able to administer the administration of elections, to be able to influence that. That has to be a non-starter.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Congressman Lee Zeldin, candidate for governor of the state of New York. Again, happy Passover to you and your family. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.